You cannot live an ignited life if you're not paying attention to where you need more fire. And sometimes that fire is beautiful and comfortable and sexual and intimate and amazing, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. But if you don't pay attention, you don't know, so you miss the good and you miss the opportunity to fix the bad.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Addict Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Addict Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are going deep today, which is always my favorite. And this is the first time we're actually going deep on the topic of being ignited, which is kind of what this whole podcast is about. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're so excited to share this with you.
Yeah. Before we jump in, there's just something I have to do. I don't know if you guys have heard me do this before, but we're going to do a review of the week. But I think this one definitely deserves a drum roll. So, Soph, can you pull out the drum kit? Thank you for that. Wow, I like that thing at the end. That was interesting. It's like, I don't know, merengues or something. I Cannot Thank You Enough by Curdy Limbo. The Ignited program has turned my life around. I've been entrenched in bad beliefs and habits, and every resource Ignited provided me has been enlightening. It's been saving me from the money talks, the addiction workshops, the YouTube talks, the book, but now these amazing podcasts. Adi, Sophie, Ignited community, all who have contributed, y'all have really helped pave my path to success and healing, and I'm so grateful. I recommend this to anyone and everyone. It's for so much more than just addiction. All walks of life have been impacted. Sincerely, thank you. Damn, Curdy. Curdy, you just made my month. And not only, Curdy, should you reach out to us, info@ignited.com or ignited.me or one of us on Instagram to let us know, and you will get a care package. But the Hero program that apparently you're part of is getting a full remake. In about 2 months, it'll be essentially Hero 2.0 is the only way I can really call it. We've been working on it for months. And if you already signed up, you get to get it for $0 extra, which is pretty amazing.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah. So if you haven't signed up for his Hero course yet, this is going to be, as soon as this is edited and ready to go, highly recommend you get it on that.
It's pure magic. And now I'm not the one saying it. Curdy's saying it. So thank you for that, Curdy. Do you have a quote for us?
I do have a quote. So Cleo Wade, if you don't know Cleo Wade, she has the most beautiful writings and highly recommend. Remember to always allow your point of view to grow and shift, if for no other reason than because you deserve to know the world as someone who is grounded looking up at the mountain just as much as you deserve to stand at the top, knowing in your heart not only the view that close to heaven, but also every single view along the way.
I love that.
So as we talk about today, we're going deep on how to live an ignited life and what that looks like. So what Cleo is talking about here is exactly that. Allowing your point of view to grow and shift, allowing yourself to evolve, and if for no other reason, because you deserve to know the world as someone who's grounded on the earth, and also someone who's at the very, very tippy top, looking at the top with your head against the clouds, so close to heaven, being at that extreme high, but also remembering what it feels like, having that perspective in your heart to be grounded.
This is that thing that you always talk about, right? Which is kind of like our opposing influences. I'm generally like in the world more grounded and realistic, or like fact-based and blah, blah, whatever. And you're floating, and you always say like, if we didn't have our relationship and we didn't have the conversations we were having, then you'd float up and away.
Yep.
And if I didn't have you, then it'd be heavier, and I'd be kind of on the ground all the time, but I get to float up because of our relationship. So this is exactly a quote for that. And it really goes along with what we're talking about all throughout this episode today, which is, to be ignited, you have to be active. There's no passive version that will get you an ignited life. And I just want to remind you guys this because it's happening within the next week. But one of the ways you got to be active is you got to vote. You got to get out there and do your job. Now, I'm going to stay out of what I think you should vote for, right? I have my own political opinions. Sophie has hers.
We just need you to vote.
We just need you to be active, right? We can't. It's the time is long, long gone for us to stay on the sidelines. It's just not enough. So go out and vote. Play your part. We can't call this even a representative democracy. We're not really doing our job if we don't vote. So that's an important little thing. I'm not going to go more into that, but what we decided to do for today's episode is not to give you the same old ideas of how to be active in your life and how to move forward and play a role, because we've talked about that a lot, but we wanted to really give you some tangible ways that you can remember what to do on a daily basis, how to really live. And so we decided to kind of make a quick little outline that will explain it. Do you want to tell everybody how we stay ignited, babe?
Yes. So we broke it down into 3 kind of points, main points, and then we'll get into each one. So the first one is getting out of your comfort zone. This is the number one way to stay ignited, to get ignited and to stay ignited. The second one is making time to be present to your life, present to what you've manifested, present to the beauty, present to the pain, present to it all. Being present to your life is going to keep you ignited. And then number 3 is mixing it up. So continuously trying new things, whether it relates to relationships, sex, travel, the restaurants you go to, whatever it might be, and we'll get more into that. You must constantly be mixing it up so that you keep challenging your growth edges and you stay excited. You want to stay excited and ignited about your life. Yeah. That's the secret.
And we're going to point out the differences between these. But, again, you guys write us, you ask us questions all the time. How do you guys do this? We try to be very transparent when we share. So it's not like we only show you the incredibly good stuff that we experience all the time. We also share the pain and the discomfort. And that starts with this idea. Number 1 is you've got to be able to get out of your comfort zone. And when we say that, we're literally meaning pushing the envelopes of what you believe is possible in your own life. Now, this is not that easy always, because we get comfortable and we try to kind of stay to what we know and stay within the zone that we've gotten or grown comfortable living in. But I think Sophie and I are constantly even looking for new opportunities to push edges that we didn't even know exist.
I just really want to encourage you right now as you're listening. Maybe you're driving in your car, maybe you're in your neighborhood walking, maybe you're cleaning the house and you have your headphones in. I want you to take a moment and pause and think about, where are you pushing your growth edges right now? Where are you stepping out of your comfort zone? Just think about it. Take a moment. If you have a journal close by, you can pause this right now and go to your journal. Really take a moment to think about, where am I pushing my comfort zone? Have I been doing the same workout every single day for a year? So not there, right? Is my sex life feeling a little bland and vanilla and boring and same old, same old? That's not a bad thing. It's just not going to ignite you. It's not going to fill you up. So that's what we're talking about here. With your food, are you trying different foods, or are you kind of in a rut and having the exact same thing for lunch every single day? That can get boring over time, right? Like, try new things, new spices, new flavors. There are so many ways to have these adventures within our own hearts, our own experiences. And honestly, a lot of this, you don't even have to leave your home. Like, try a new class. There are tons of amazing teachers that I respect and love, including myself, that teach virtually. There's no excuses. Everything is at your fingertips, but you have to have the awareness of, where am I pushing my comfort zone? Where am I pushing my growth edges? And where am I not?
Yeah. And what we're talking about here, if you notice in particular, as Sophie mentioned, is like going for the unfamiliar, right? Leaning into things that you haven't tried it, haven't known yet. And I love that you're talking about this in so many different areas of life, because sometimes people freak out about this and they think you have to go to some massive shift. That's not what we're talking about. You can't maintain that forever. You can't go on climbing the highest peak, even though you never climbed a mountain in your life.
No,
every
it's a
single
state
time.
of being. It's a state of living and a state of being. And that's the place you want to step into, is in everything in your life. Asking yourself, am I too comfortable right now? Am I getting into a habit? For example, we came back just now from a trip to Cabo. It was our 11-year wedding anniversary. My best friend just finally got engaged. Finally. 7 years I've been along her relationship ride. It was a time to celebrate, and we did. For me, I went pretty hard. lots of substances, lots of champagne, lots of drinks by the pool, waking up. And like, I paced myself to the best of my ability, but I celebrated hard and there's no regrets about that. But on the flip side, now I'm going to take a week or two off anything.
Well, and even for you, partying like that for 4 days straight is really unusual. And I think that's the point here is like,
for sure,
you recognize that you were going to celebrate in a different way. This group of people parties or celebrates differently than you normally do.
And I prepped for weeks ahead of time. I knew what I was getting myself into, so I prepped myself so that I could push that part of my comfort zone. That is outside of my comfort zone to let go on that level. So we're all at different levels, but my point is, for every expansion, there's a contraction. And for every comfort zone that you push, then you have to push in the other way. I'm in a place right now where it's comfortable having a glass of wine each night. It's no big deal. It's fine to maybe have like a half of an edible once in a while. Like, I don't even think twice about it right now. And that to me is, for me, a quote problem. And I don't want to say that I have a problem right now. I'm just saying, I'm calling myself out and saying, I've gotten too comfortable in the celebration, and now it's time to reel it back and take a few weeks to just get to my ultimate health again. And then I get to decide. And it's not about extremes. It's never about extremes. These comfort zones, like Adi was saying before, is just stretching you a little bit. I've gotten a little too comfortable with Netflix all day on Saturday, or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever these behaviors, only you know.
Yeah, exactly. So we're all doing this.
Constantly.
I mean, you and I, we are definitely constantly doing this. I mean, you're talking about Cabo, but even for us, we talk to you guys about this concept of radical transparency all the time. To me, radical transparency is another version of this. So many of us get comfortable with like the status quo in our relationship. We're not fighting. It's okay. And so things come up for you, resentments, fears, weirdnesses. And most people, if we're honest about it, if you've stopped right now and you're journaling or whatever you're doing, like, we don't talk. You could write a list right now of things that you haven't said to your partner that have been bothering you. For us, radical transparency is partially about constantly pushing up against that edge. I mean, we literally just had it. We're recording this on a weekend. Last night, we had a fight of something that had built up over, 3 or 4, maybe 5 days. And you know, it was, if you were in our house last night, it sounded like a massive fight for, what would you say, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but it
was necessary.
It was built up over days. And in the end, the reason I'm bringing it up here, and in the end, you said something which was like, the way I got affected by the story of what happened was different than what you had known of me. You were like, this didn't make sense. I thought you were
like
joking.
It was in alignment with you.
And part of what you're saying is related to this. Like, I had a weird time even saying it out loud because it isn't something I would normally talk about, right? This idea of like you getting this extravagant opportunity to go and have a really celebratory night, especially after we just went away to Mexico. You were like, he can't really be serious that he cares about this. Right. And you said it when we were fighting, you were like, it just didn't compute that this was you.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned it, that's also why it was harder for me, maybe to some extent, to make a big point about it. Right. Because it didn't feel like the usual me. But you know what? It was also honest. It was also really the feeling that I had.
But I felt, so just in reference to this, I felt like you weren't being fully radically transparent. I felt like you
you said you felt like I was joking.
Because I feel like you were kind of being passive. I feel like you were like almost passive aggressive in the way that you were explaining how you felt because you were ashamed that you felt that because it was out of alignment.
Okay, that might be what you're saying today. But yesterday you said that you thought I was like, it couldn't have been serious, that I was joking. And so what I'm saying, the point is,
it wasn't matching up. And so it felt like out of alignment. And if you were like fully in your radical transparency and fully in your stretching your growth edges, then it probably would have come out a little bit differently, which is why it caused tension between us, because you felt out of alignment to me, which made me out of alignment. And then your intensity, I matched your intensity. And we're all in relationships, right? The point of this, like our fights and our personal stories we share, you don't have to be in a relationship with a partner in order to relate. We all are constantly in relationships with other people. You and your boss, you and your best friend, you and your cousin, you and your child. We're constantly in relationships. You and yourself.
Yeah. So if there are areas right now where you're not
showing up,
or you're just not pushing, like there's a discomfort, there's a barrier, and you're kind of letting it go, this is what we're talking about. Is you got to push your edges on these things.
And like this concept of getting out of your own comfort zone, like this comes in so many forms. Like when I'm taking yoga, not even teaching, when I'm taking a yoga class, oftentimes I want to do what I'm good at, right? Like we want to just do what we're good at. Why would we want to feel uncomfortable? That is the practice. So that's what I teach when I'm teaching, and that's what I take, that same information. I'm constantly walking in this truth of how do I live an ignited life. So if I'm taking yoga and the teacher says, lift your right leg up into awkward airplane, I know where she's going is an awkward place. I need to lean into that and not say, no, I'm going to just stay right here. She gave me the option to stay here. I'm going to take the opportunity to grow and to feel uncomfortable, because that's where the magic is.
Yeah. So notice, right? The discomfort is still there. Just because you're pushing your boundaries doesn't mean you're comfortable in doing it. You are uncomfortable. It's just that you embrace.
It's a conscious
and look
choice.
Forward to that. And
we're asking you to make a conscious choice to walk into and lean into the discomfort.
Yeah, absolutely. So Curdy mentioned the Hero Program. In the Hero Program, but we give it away to you guys for free, is something I call the Wheel of Life, and we also have a Feelings Wheel workshop that are available for free for you. We'll have links below. The Wheel of Life is a pretty simple concept. It's a 10-slice pizza.
It's incredible.
It just analyzes how you're doing in these 10 areas of life. I have news for you if you've never taken it with us or with anybody else. We added a couple of special slices that you'll see when you do it. But if you've never taken it, I've got news for you. You'll fill it out and you will see that there is areas of your life that are being neglected. Stop neglecting them. But you don't know that you're neglecting them until somebody asks you, hey, how are you doing on fun and recreation? You're like, oh, damn, I haven't taken time for fun or self-care in a really, really long time. So finance, relationships, romance, family, all the different areas are on there. Go check it out and see how you're doing.
Yeah.
Because once you realize it, you will see, you'll look at this wheel and you go, oh my God, I'm doing well in these 4 areas, but these 3 are really suffering. What we're saying is you don't let them suffer. You go, okay, how do I challenge myself in these areas in particular? And, you know, I feel like part of the reason that I live a blessed life now is I do that. If I'm honest about it, I probably do it every other month. I need to do it closer to every month, but I do it about every other month. And I almost always find one that I'm relatively weak in. Now, nicely for me, you score these things from 0 to 10, and weak for me now is like a 7. Like if I score a 7 on something, then I've taken my eye off the ball. I don't really get anything but 8s, 9s, and 10s on that wheel now. But I'll tell you, when I started on this journey, my wheel was full of 2s and 3s, right? Just areas that have been neglected for years. So neglected, I didn't even know what to do about them. And so, again, what we're saying is identify where those spots are and then go all in on trying to address them, fix them. You won't know what that means initially, but push those boundaries and you'll see massive opportunity.
So I am challenging you. Your homework after this is to print out the Wheel of Life and the Feelings Wheel and dig into the Wheel of Life, and then take a screenshot and tag one of us or both of us.
Hell yeah.
I would love to see your Wheel of Life. It's such an incredible thing. We're basically giving you a free life coaching session with that Wheel of Life. That is the first session when one of us does a session with someone, or if I've ever taken life coaching, it's always something like that. And It's an evaluation of your own life. So it's one layer of growth to listen to this podcast. If you take what we're giving you and apply it to your life, it's a whole different layer. And
we know it's expensive because it costs exactly $0. So it's going to take time. It's just time. It takes time. And time is the most expensive thing we have in the world, right? We never get it back. Doesn't matter how much money you make. But here's the thing. If you don't do this work, you will waste more time in your life. So like Sophie gave you a challenge, do those things and share them with us.
And also on the last little part of like stepping out of your comfort zone is having uncomfortable conversations. So, you know, there's being in a yoga class and taking the uncomfortable pose, knowing that you hate chair pose, but sinking your teeth into it, because sitting in the discomfort is where the lessons are. You're sitting in chair pose, you're uncomfortable, maybe you're in a really deep squat and you're like, I don't want to hold this for a minute. I just don't want to. I'm feeling resistance. You notice the resistance coming up and you stay in the pose. You're not going to die. Right? We know you're not going to die. You may fall.
Has anybody ever died of a chair pose?
That I know of, no. Please correct me if we're wrong.
All right.
So if you know that information, then you get to learn from it. So we're always learning and encouraging ourselves to step into the darkness, step into the uncomfortable zone, step into the place where you feel discomfort. And in that place of uncomfiness is where you grow and you observe yourself. Oh, I'm shaking. Okay, that's just a sensation. It feels uncomfortable. Okay, wow, I'm already halfway done. Okay, I'm going to continue to sit a little deeper into this and encourage that feeling to come up, and then it will pass and I'll take a break and it'll feel so much better and I will strengthen because of it. And if you think about the way our muscles work, they change after breaking down. That's literally what our muscles are doing, is they're breaking down. So if you want to get a bigger butt or bigger muscles or smaller this or smaller that, you need to break it down in order to get the results you want.
Yep.
That's what happens. So we're asking you to break yourself down, break through the discomfort, and on the other side, whether it be a conversation with your best friend, your boss, you know what I'm talking about here. You know that conversation that needs to be had. Yep. Lean into it.
Yeah, and this leads actually really, really well into the next piece, which is, well, how do you know when you're uncomfortable? That's why you have to take time to be present. Look, yes, of course, you should be present all the time, like a monk sitting on a mountaintop in Tibet, paying attention to their breath. But if we're honest about it, life gets exhausting, it gets tiring, it just gets full. We've got 3 kids, 2 businesses, and this podcast we do together. Life gets full. So sometimes you put yourself on auto drive. And we get it. I'm not telling you not to. There are times where you got to take care of yourself, and that's what you do. What we're saying is, if you know you do that, also take the time to be present. You know, watching TV on the couch. Sophie and I do this. Like at the end of a lot of nights, we'll watch 30 minutes to an hour of like a show because it's just been so much. But we're being present the vast majority of the rest of the day, and that's kind of when we take a break.
Well, no, I actually would like to add a little layer to that.
Sure.
We watch something passively at night so that we can spend that time together, being passive together and watching entertainment together, being on the same wavelength. I'd say 90% of the time, our phones are away. They're on airplane mode in the other room, charging for the night because we turn off our cell phones to give ourselves that space. And then we're being present to each other the same way you would go to a movie and watch a movie in a movie theater. The idea behind it is an intention of connecting through disconnecting.
Yeah, and hopefully we're watching something that it feels like it's contributing to us, etc. So there are
and also it's okay if it's not.
Yeah.
It's all, you can watch a documentary, you can watch something that brings you, something that like challenges your intellect, but also sometimes just letting go together is part of the magic. For someone like that works really hard and is working constantly and always in their head and constantly thinking and challenging themselves, to be passive is actually a gift, and to let go with someone else is beautiful. Now, not being present to that action and that intention would be scrolling on your cell phone while you're watching TV, right? Now you're not being present to either thing. That is not being present to the experience or to your life. So that's where I want to take it one more step deeper, where it's like, there's also 2 different ways to experience it.
Yeah, there are probably more than 2 different ways to experience it. What we're saying is take the time, right? Yep. Build presence of mind into your everyday life. I think we talked about this in stories, but maybe we didn't. Sophie and I, in the middle of a work day last week, we had to go take care of a passport for Kai, and it was kind of a stressful situation, and because it was just fitting in between all these other things, and I took us a completely wrong direction in the car, which gave like 30, 40 more minutes into the thing, and in the middle, some money concern came up for me, and in our relationship, I'm definitely the one that is more worried about money on a regular basis. And so this thing came up, and I was, I looked at our bank account. It was lower than I expected it to be. I started freaking out a little bit. And so again, radical transparency. I was talking to Sophie about it, and Sophie's not normally worried about it. But what Sophie was able to do in the moment, because she had presence, was to turn to me and say, what do you need to make this better?
Yep.
And by the way, when I say that, it's not like Sophie's pretty magical, but it's not like she could make money appear out of anywhere. So we're still staying into the, in the moment in the car. And I said, well, I need to understand what's coming in. I need to understand where our money is. I don't know what's coming in from your end, etc. And so Sophie, instead of running away from it and saying, well, screw you, or just the way it's impacting her, etc., spent like 30 or 40 minutes between contacting her manager and some of these other people to get a summary, because she doesn't know, because she's comfortable with it, so she doesn't care.
Yep.
So she shifted into this other place to say, okay, he told me what he needs. He needs to understand this number. I'm going to try to get that number. And then she was able to over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Had Sophie tried to just run away from the present moment and cover it up, you've all done this. We've all done this in the car. Like you just put music on because it's uncomfortable, or you change the topic, or you turn around and play a game with your kid in the backseat. What you're doing is you're saying, I don't want to have this experience. I'm going to go move to another one. And because Sophie did that, she was present for the little bit of discomfort that existed for the next 30 to 40 minutes as she built this up. She gave me what I needed. It worked, just like because I've learned to know myself pretty well. So it worked and it calmed me down, and it allowed us to just move on with our life. And
we were being present to the feeling, even though it was uncomfortable. So Adi was upset. He felt unsafe. He felt triggered. He felt ungrounded. He felt like we were having money issues. I felt like the reality was different. I felt like my perspective could help him feel more secure. So I took my partner's hand and said, what do you need? And you can fill in the blank with anything here. If your partner is feeling uncomfortable because they're triggered because they feel jealous about something, if they're triggered because of an old experience that just came up for them, if they just got in a fight with their mom, if whatever it is, you notice that your partner is going through something, and then you rise to the occasion and say, in an effort, in your head, in an effort for us to feel better in this moment so we can have a nice rest of our day and spend it side by side. And so you feel a little more comforted. What do you need?
Yeah.
And that's a big moment in relationships when you can say, what can you need, instead of like, can you stop being a baby? Shut up.
100%. And this comes up we could give millions of examples, even in that, in the other thing that we had the other day that we mentioned already. I'd send a text because I wasn't able to talk, but I sent a text when I left the house and I just said, hey, let's just set aside some time after the kids go to bed to talk. And it's just this way of saying, I'm not, just FYI, I'm not leaving that space. I'm not ignoring this. I find, we talked about how in Ignited, for the relationship part of what we do, we really want to lower the divorce rate. I can't tell you the number of times I've met couples who have had issues for 15 years. And everybody knows they have those issues. Like both partners know this is an issue. They haven't talked about it in a decade. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes people make. You cannot live an ignited life. We're going to give you a very specific metaphor here by the time we're done today, but you cannot live an ignited life if you're not paying attention to where you need more fire. And sometimes that fire is beautiful and comfortable and sexual and intimate and amazing, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. But if you don't pay attention, you don't know, so you miss the good and you miss the opportunity to fix the bad.
The final point of living an ignited life is mixing it up. So as we're pushing our edges, coming out of our comfort zones, you're going to have more options available to you because you're not the same person. You're not the same version of who you were before. And we are constantly going...
And you're not the same as your partner.
No, you're not the same as your partner. And even if you're not relating this, like living an ignited life, just because this is the Ignited Relationships episode and we're in a relationship to each other, this is just generally anyone that wants to live an ignited life. So part of mixing it up is trying new things. Remember in the beginning of the episode, I talked about always having the same lunch? It can literally be that simple. If you every day get up and have a superfood coffee, there's nothing wrong with the superfood coffee. It's that you're doing the same thing every day.
100%.
Yesterday, I just didn't have the coffee. I didn't. I had an iced coffee at 1 p.m. because I was having a long day instead of having a coffee in the morning. I listened to my body and thought, I've had a lot of coffee every single morning for months. Maybe I should switch it up. Not because there's anything wrong with what I'm doing or eating or having. There's nothing wrong with having salmon and asparagus every night for dinner. What is wrong within that, it's not a nutritional thing. It's a pushing your boundaries and trying new things. Your palate wants to try new things. It gets bored. Even if you love salmon, even if you love the best steak in the world, Adi, you've given this example a million times. Imagine your number one dish. It's your death wish. If you're on your last meal in life, you're about to be executed. What do you want that last meal to be? Okay, that might be great for that one meal, but you don't want that every single day.
I think for me, mixing it up is also a lot about, sometimes people get this confused. This is like the balance to pushing your boundaries. Pushing your boundaries will make you uncover new things, new places to go, new people to talk to, new foods to eat, new sexual positions to try out, and new jobs and careers that you make.
That's like the exploration.
Now, as you do that, you're going to discover things you really love and things you like. Yeah. Keeping almost like a running list of those things.
Absolutely.
And then alternating and changing around so that you keep again, like just think of the analogy of being ignited. You keep the fire going instead of kind of getting used to the same thing over and over. Monotony will break even at your edges. So if you are always pushing your edges, you're only going out, you're never going in. That can be really, really dangerous over time because you will still get used to that thing. Mixing it up is about everything we're talking about is a balance. You've got to go into the inside, to the things you're familiar with, the things you like, and then you got to push out against the boundaries, and you got to come back over and over and over. And as you do that, as you explore, Sophie mentioned the Cabo trip that we went on, like as you explore, your body will adjust, your brain will adjust, you will incorporate new ways of being, and take that information. And again, almost have this running list. You can have an actual list if you want.
No, you should have a list. I was going to interject with that. Like I have a joy list. I have a playlist. Like Adi and I have things we want to try, places we want to go. If you have these running lists, if they're in your brain, but even better, if they're in your phone, in your notes section, if you write them down together, you will start to manifest and create those things. That's how attention works. By putting your attention into it and your awareness into it, that will help it grow. That will help it nourish. You're constantly trying new things. You want to keep doing things that scare you, which is the first part. And that's actually why we put the stretching your comfort zone first. And this as a third thing of being an ignited life is it has to be in that order, because how do you know what to try if you've never tried it?
100%. And look, before you start having this way of thinking about it, the only things you know to try are the things that other people in the past, primarily your parents and your friends from like junior high and high school, taught you about life. This might be a surprise, but that's not all that's available. Most of you listening right now have already pushed beyond that boundary because you're here listening or you really, really want it. And so these three things work together. You pay attention in your present so that you know when things are uncomfortable. You push boundaries instead of staying stagnant and stuck in order to get out of that pain. You don't get out of pain by ignoring it. You do it by getting present to it. And then as these possibilities open, you do an active job of always managing it. And we came up with this analogy. It kind of seems so obvious given the fact that we call this company and the podcast Ignited, but this idea of literally think of your life as a flame. Like how many of you have been to a campfire, have been to a bonfire, have been to a place where you literally, back old school, right? You take wood and you put it together and you have kindling and then you light it up and you're sitting at a fire. Well, guess what? To do this, if you've ever done it, you know that you have to maintain that fire. And I want you to think of your life as an ignited life, as that bonfire. How can you make it the best that it can be? And so if you've done this ever in life, you don't just light a fire and let it sit. If you do, it goes out very, very quickly. So there are some specific things you have to do. Like one of them that always seemed really, I don't know if you felt this way about fires, babe, when you were like a kid and had bonfires or campfires, but like you fan the flames, which is really a weird thing. And I think to me, this is the same as pushing the boundaries, right? It's like, you take a piece of wood or cardboard or something and you essentially, you look like you're trying to extinguish the fire. You're like pushing air on it. But what it does is it moves the heat.
Oh, my parents used to have this really cool, like...
The blower, right? Yeah.
You they go...
Yeah.
And you close it down.
Thing,
a billow. Yeah.
Exactly.
It was like this beautiful thing that was where the fireplace was.
And it looks like you're going to put the fire out. You're like trying to quote unquote blow the fire out, but that's not what it actually does. It goes against the principles that you would imagine, just like pushing the boundaries, right? It actually makes the fire bigger to do that. And so while you still have wood, you still have kindling, that helps the fire grow. That to me is the equivalent for us of pushing the boundaries.
Yep. And I also wanted to just go back to something Adi was talking about with stagnancy. So a practice, just like the practice in, why do we move our bodies? Why do we, like in yoga class, take that harder pose or sit into that chair pose even deeper? All of this is about stretching, right? But it's also about not being stagnant. So a lot of the themes in my class is about stretching and making space and about movement. Like my classes are really fluid because that's what I like my life to feel like. So it's all like a metaphor for life. And if you want to start simple, say that now you have the awareness, you did the activities that we challenge you to do in the beginning, you've done your wheel of life, you've thought about the places where you are stretching your growth edges and comfort zones, and maybe it's in 0 areas of your life. So if you're someone listening and you have not stretched your comfort zones in any area of your life in quite some time, I want you to start to challenge yourself in very simple ways. Coming back to food. If you have the same breakfast every single day, or if you have your coffee the same way every single day and you have the same order at Starbucks every single day, I want you to switch it up. Your challenge is to switch it up. So the next time you go to Starbucks, maybe you don't go to Starbucks. Maybe you go to a different coffee shop and you get a completely different latte than you would ever have had. And maybe you make it at home. So this is what I'm saying is like slowly trying something new every day for a week.
I wonder how many people are sitting in their car and I go like, I don't know if I can do this.
I can't not have my order. Whoa.
I'm thinking of some of our friends who'd be like, I can't not go to Starbucks. But this is such an important lesson, right? Like, look, think of how easy what Sophie is asking is right now. It's so easy to go to a different coffee shop. It's so easy to change the way you order things.
To drive a different direction.
We get into ruts. We get into these stuck places. And to me, this is like going to the fire analogy again. It's like sitting in the fire, looking at it, and just expecting that because you let it coast, it'll go on forever. And then it slowly eats away at it until it dies.
Yeah, until it dies. I constantly, like, even last night on the way home, we went to the beach with the kids and there's 3 different ways, there's multiple ways, but there's 3 main ways to get home. And I took the one that I never take.
I feel like the Californians right now.
And I did that on purpose to stretch myself. Who gives a crap which way I go home? It doesn't matter. No one else is noticing, but that's the point. You want to do these things when no one's watching. This is your own practice within yourself. This is to challenge my growth edge, and it sounds so silly, but I'm going to go the direction that I never go because it switches things up and keeps it mixed up for
Guys,
me.
it literally switches things up in the brain. Your brain is used to operating the way that it's used to operating in all ways. So it just runs on autopilot, right? And I think a lot of people, they want progress without the effort. You want movement in your life without putting any work into it. And you want to make success happen, but you're not willing to have mistakes or have a crappy cup of coffee one day. But I'm telling you, if you can get your brain used to switching, it'll be more used to switching in every area and you'll feel less uncomfortable by it. It's like if you tell your brain this, you know what? I'm just not going to keep doing the same thing in almost any area of my life. Your brain can get used to this. It can start actually appreciating that comfort. And I look at this as literally like adding wood to the fire. Sophie taking a different route home yesterday changed the way her day felt.
Yep.
It changed her ability and trust in herself. Maybe you get lost for 15 minutes or 3 seconds.
That's part of the beauty.
It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Just like you may have a cup of coffee at a different coffee shop and go, I didn't like this one as much as I like my usual one. That's okay. These are the experiences.
We want to encourage you to feel as alive as you possibly can. That's what being ignited is. Having your fire completely like at the most elevated place. The fire is going, it brings warmth, it brings beautiful light. That's what we want. We want you to feel fully in your power and fully alive. And the way to do that is by taking these simple measures, by taking these bigger measures, by really practicing this every single moment of your life. Whether you're driving home, picking the salad you want for lunch, deciding where you want to go to lunch, deciding which friend you want to meet with, deciding to change the conversation and the way that you go with that conversation. All of it is within you to keep you feeling the most alive that you possibly can.
So true. And if you are, I know not everybody's in a coupleship, but if you are in a coupleship, here's a news flash you may be unaware of. You're not going to be in the same place in your kind of fire cycle, right? Sometimes I'm looking at the fire, I'm going, this is exactly how I want it to be. This is exactly the level of heat that I want and the amount of light. And Sophie's looking at it from a slightly different angle going, babe, our fire's going out. I'm like, no, we're good. And either you have to go on your own and go get some extra wood and put it in there, or you have to talk to your partner and really get them to see it.
Walk around to your partner's side and look at the fire from their perspective. Listen. Just listen. Have your ears open. Have your heart open. It's not about being right. It's about being open enough to say, oh, whoa, okay, there is that little gap that it probably will go out in 30 minutes. Great thing that you added that to the fire instead of making it about you and feeling like upset that they're right and you're wrong. It's not about that.
So you have to be able to speak up and say that you're seeing gaps. You have to, again, right? You have to be present. So you have to be paying attention. I've literally, there's a holiday in Judaism called Lag BaOmer in Israel. We celebrate and it's literally bonfires everywhere. And I remember, especially when I was a smaller kid, kind of hanging out and just watching it being done and not really knowing how to control the fire myself. And so the first few that my friends and I tried to do, we'd put them together, but then we get wrapped up in something else and it would just die. And it's not that it's impossible to restart a fire that's died. It's possible. it's a lot harder to restart a dead fire than it is to throw an extra piece of wood, one little tiny piece of wood into a fire that's going to keep it going.
Yeah, and that can be, if you are in a relationship like Adi's saying, that could be that small piece of wood could be, instead of watching that TV show, sharing a glass of wine or sharing a conversation or doing one of our check-ins and switching it up. Instead of doing that, maybe you guys read at night instead of watching the same show you always watch. Like, that change in route can be a game changer in the grand picture of your relationship and what this fire looks like.
Yeah, there's a challenge I give to a lot of the men. I'm sorry to kind of be stereotypical here a little bit, but to a lot of the men that I work with, and when they print up the feelings wheel, because we do these check-ins that you guys might have heard about before, and we just did 11 tips for a relationship that will release pretty soon, so you'll see that. But when we do those, I heard this from you for years, Sophie, and I'm getting better at it, and I'm trying to coach a lot of the men that I work with to get better at it. Sometimes you don't have the vocabulary of the words. When I mean add wood or change boundaries or push yourself, sometimes it's just introducing a new emotional word to your lexicon. Like, maybe you've never used the word that you feel obsolete or that you feel taken advantage of, or something else that makes emotional sense to you about where you are in life. Just throwing that word into a conversation with your partner, there's not a simpler tip about relationships that I can probably offer you. Talk about your life, your emotional life, in a different way than you have before, and your partner will react. Sometimes they won't know what to do with it because they'll be like, oh my God, I've never heard you speak this way. What does this even mean? Have you been cheating on me? And you can say yes with a feelings wheel. But like, the things we're talking about don't have to be monumental. Sophie and I are known, and I know we talk a lot in here about some of our bigger pushes. Sophie talked about the MDMA for trauma, and we've talked about monogamy stuff. We talked about all these things that seem like huge jumps and hurdles. The vast majority of this work, though, is in the everyday attention, paying attention, being present, understanding where we need to push our boundaries and doing it, and then always going, hey, babe, we've been stuck in this little pattern for a minute. Let's mix it up. Let's do that thing that we used to do 6 months ago. And now it's such a dance for us that it's not, look, I'm not going to tell you there's never resistance, but there's almost never resistance when the other partner says, hey, let's change things up a little bit. Yeah.
And if it feels scary, then you're in the right place. Just know that. Know that if it feels scary, if it feels like, oh, I haven't looked at this stuff in so long and I don't want to lean in, like, you're in the right place, you're held, and just start small. Start with your salad.
100%. So we really, really hope that this summary helps and puts this stuff in perspective for you. This stuff can feel overwhelming sometimes, but it doesn't have to be. It's about the balance. It's about having a partner that also listens. It's about gradually getting better at doing all of this and not being a perfectionist, not trying to be amazing at everything all the time. But if you pay attention to these principles and you're always staying as present as you can, pushing your boundaries when you can, and then keeping that running list of what works and making sure that you don't stay stuck in a pattern, your life will be ignited. That bonfire will roar harder and stronger and longer than it ever has before. And you'll see this doesn't feel like a challenge anymore. It actually just feels like the way you run your life. It's beautiful.
Exactly. That's the key, is that it will, I promise you, from your yoga class to your relationships to the way that you treat yourself, the words that you speak to yourself, all of it will become more effortless once you start to practice it.
Absolutely. And so we have a lot of different things that we do. We have the relationship workshop that we're going to reshoot here pretty quickly. As Curdy talked about today, that we have the Hero program. If anybody you know struggles with addictive related issues or you do yourself, these are kind of like relatively easy lifts if we're honest about it. What is it, like 88 cents a day, I think, is the cheapest option we have for that program. It's pretty crazy.
It's so beautiful.
And these are all, even if you don't do our stuff, push your boundaries, constantly find more ways to extend. All right, we hope this was useful for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Next month is a brand new theme for you. Thanks for joining us. Share, screenshot, subscribe, tell us what you've loved, and we can't wait to hear from you.
And remember to share the love. Mwah.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.